Natalie. Okay, over to you, Natalie.
Thank you so much, Faith, for having me in your virtual sanctuary. I think it's such a beautiful space. I've been to your conferences before and love the community that you've built in person with the conference, as well as these virtual catch-ups that we can all do from our homes, or in my case, I've stayed back at my client's office. So hence the background, not so domestic. It's a pinboard in a meeting room. I would really like to make this a discussion circle, like a book club, where we can share some of our thoughts and experiences, the challenges, and really anchor it around some of the topics around the book. I know that some of you have a copy of my book, but I also know that a few of you may not. I might just kind of give you, at least to start with, an overview of the book and why I wrote it, and then we can throw it out, because I'd love to also hear from you as to where you're at with your midlife transition and some of the things that you're experiencing. It would be really great to kind of link the two in terms of some of the insights that I've drawn together along with your own personal experiences. So I guess I started my quest about 5 or 6 years ago when I was still working in financial services for a corporate, and there were some common themes in terms of what was going on in my family life, with conversations with my mum in particular, who was thinking a lot about what would her home life look like once my dad retired. So I guess being in the generation of baby boomer, my dad being a migrant from Hong Kong, quite traditional in terms of patriarchal, and also my mum playing a bit of a role as, I guess she would say, primary role is wife and mother, and also chef. She loves cooking, very good chef. And so she knew that her life would be turned upside down once my dad started to spend more time at work due to retirement, because he's always been a really hard worker, and also had a job that means that he works outside of the home. So she started to share her concerns around what life could look like, and she doesn't necessarily want to cook a home cooked hot meal every day once my dad retired. So being the eldest daughter and my brother lives overseas, I started to think, yeah, that's a really good question. What do people who are relatively healthy, what do they do in order to continue that meaningful life and still be very social and contribute to society, but just in a different way? And so I guess from there, I was also observing in the job that I had in going and talking to people working in operational roles in banks, mostly women who'd been in those roles for many decades. I was seeing this parallel of, no matter what sort of role people are in or what industry, if you've been in a role or an industry for many decades, it's actually very hard. That fear of change was something that I just observed in terms of whether it's my mum having her life uplifted because of the uncertainty of what would that life look like once dad started to spend more time at home, and then also looking at all these operational staff members who were fearful of what digital transformation would do once their banks started to operationalize and digitize their roles, even though they really, in many ways, thought it was a great idea to have to do less manual work so they could focus more on the customer. So it's kind of having all these parallel thoughts and observations in kind of different spheres of my life. And I started to talk to people at different phases of their second half of life, men and women. Some people who had successfully retired, and when I say retired, it meant that they were doing different things in their lives. They were doing things that may be related to study, teaching, maybe some volunteer work, a combination of a few different things that they had designed. And then I also spoke to people who had maybe gone backwards and forwards from retirement, who had would say, look, I tried retirement and ended up going back to my old job, not maybe after 6 months or so. And, just kind of seeing these patterns of people who seemingly had made a really smooth transition to retirement, had done it over the course of a very long time. So it wasn't this sudden jump into retirement. It was more like a progressive change of tweaking a few things here and there. And then really it was more about dialing certain activities up so that they were doing more of the things that they wanted to do that were more purposeful, about sport and connection and learning, and less of maybe the career type of paid work that they'd been doing most of their lives. So I kind of was starting to see patterns in the people where I was interviewing. And along with doing those interviews in my learnings, I was getting lots of intros to more and more people who said, oh, you should talk to so-and-so. They had a really painful experience and they would be happy to share their stories. Or, oh gosh, there's this really inspiring person I know. I'd love to introduce you to them. And then I was also getting this encouragement from people saying, gosh, if only I had someone who could help me think about all these things that I now know, but when I was much younger. So kind of there was a bit of pushing and shoving of people saying, if only there was a service or someone who could bring me to this knowledge a lot earlier in my life and help me take those baby steps early, so that if it was difficult in making that transition to the next chapter, then at least they had a support group or some people to lean on to hear what sort of things that other people did so that they could be inspired to create their own pathway forward. So I was kind of getting layers of information from different people, inspirational stories, as well as hearing the regrets, and also getting encouragement from people to then run workshops, because professionally I run lots of innovation workshops where I used creativity techniques and kind of combining that skill of getting people to think differently and more creatively and being more playful, and kind of combining it with all the knowledge I was learning about healthy aging and longevity. And I became really hyper-focused on the topic as well, because I just thought, gosh, there's so many things that the whole ecosystem of society and all the whole economy could change in the way they think about their customers and their employees, and how services could be redesigned and how different products for older people could really help people. And so it just got me thinking a lot about what could we do to actually make it a lot more supportive. And it just got me very excited about the possibilities, because I'd also started to embark on study tours to communities to try and understand how did certain communities like the Blue Zones really build those intergenerational communities, and why, when you look at the data of the health and the well-being of certain people living in these communities, of living much longer lives, what were the common factors? And like I had read some of the Blue Zone books that Dan Buettner has written, and he's written many cookbooks, and there's a lot of emphasis around the diet aspect of the Blue Zones. And, he has defined 9 common factors, but I guess as a researcher in the work that I do around product innovation, I really wanted to get, on the ground and be able to talk to people who belong to these communities. And because I've also got a connection with Japan, I had studied in Japan as an exchange student for a couple of years when I was younger, and I do speak some Japanese. It was, I thought, linking my interest in Japan and culture and community and design it brought me back to visit different small towns in Japan with the purpose of really understanding how do they build these intergenerational communities and also businesses that get passed down, like sometimes more than 10 generations of a family business just gets passed down. And it's not just about the financial aspect, but it's also that love of that craft that gets passed down. And, there's towns that specialize in certain produce, like whether it's being famous for a type of pottery that gets produced. And there's a whole community around that, not just the potters, but also the people who will go and source the wood that goes into the kilns. And the whole economy, a mini economy, is built around what that specialty is. And each generation will pass down that knowledge, but then innovation comes about as a result of the change in market conditions, technology, and you kind of hear the history of all that passing down of knowledge and businesses and skills, but it still is relevant to today's community and economy. So I thought that's a really interesting model of how people are thriving within their communities, of generations really respecting what each generation has to offer and being really respectful of the role that everyone plays within each regional area, and really respecting the diverse roles that make their businesses thrive and make it unique, so that their whole region becomes well known for that one thing, whether it's a type of sake or a type of crafty object, that like a type of lacquerware, for example. Each region will be very specific and be famous for those things and then it becomes a value proposition as to why tourists should go and visit. So I've seen many examples of how different communities are really, I guess, building and focusing on what does community mean in that region. And it really, I've learned a lot, and I talked a lot about it in some of the workshops and programs that I was running, specifically around transition to retirement. And when the pandemic hit and obviously couldn't get together in face-to-face environments, it got me thinking, when we come back out of the pandemic, what did I want to focus on? And I brought it back to the work that I'm doing in I still am involved in an organization called FINSIA, and I've been in their diversity advisory committee for about 8 years now. And I guess I felt like banking and finance could really benefit from all these learnings. Individuals who work in those organizations, as well as the affecting change in terms of the decision makers who create products and services and how they serve their customers. If we can bring some of this thinking and examples from other places that are solving the same sorts of problems as we are in Australia with an aging population, I think, there's so much knowledge in other places that we can learn from. And I guess one of the places that's not necessarily a blue zone that I visited most recently, last year, I went to Iceland. And Iceland is really interesting in that it has a very community-oriented approach to life. And the reason why is because it's a small island country. And yes, it's part of Scandinavia, but I think it's quite different from other Scandinavian countries. And they're very progressive when it comes to gender equality. And the reason why is because they knew that as a community, it's a very small population of 380,000 people, but the elements are, really quite severe. You've got a lot of extreme cold weather, as well as the volcanoes. A few years ago, you would have probably recall the whole world stopped. No flights were happening because of the volcano eruption. So the elements are quite harsh, and that's where people really have to be multi-skilled and support each other. And no matter what, all they've got is each other to get through these really tough periods of, environmental change that they've always had in the, more than 1,000 years of their history. So I guess because it's a small population from the 1970s, they valued every single person in the population for the skills and the contribution they have to offer, whether it's as a unpaid homemaker who is supporting the family in making the home run smoothly, or contributing to companies and industry to make everything operate. So there was recognition from a very early, I guess, very progressive country in terms of recognizing the value of women, whether they're doing paid work or unpaid work. And so, yeah, they did a protest where they basically, all women downed tools, whether it was just to say, I'm not going to cook dinner tonight. Family can take care of themselves. So apparently that day, hot dogs went, like, basically sold out because all the men went and bought hot dogs to feed their children. And also the women decided not to go to work. They all gathered at all these different points. And, you know, when you go and visit Iceland, there's all these landmarks with signs saying, you know, we had X number thousands of people who gathered on this day. So everyone who was born by then still will recall that day of either their family members, you know, not having food and then their dads having to go to the butchers to buy hot dogs, or the hassle of, you know, going to work and there are all these children running around, because also all the daycare centers, schools, hospitals, banks, everything shut down. And that was when there was that realization that, oh my goodness, we need women to, you know, keep contributing, and we need to value them, and therefore we need to pay them equally. So that's been a whole flow-on effect. And, you know, I guess when I look at gender equality and how has government policy and also employment policy impacted everyone, there's this whole flow-on effect and all these existing models in places like Iceland that we could look at to learn from. So there's all the systemic changes that are, you know, quite potentially out there for Australia to study from. And I guess the book really is a way to start getting individuals to think about their next steps, their second half of life, think longer term, because I guess if we have a groundswell of women like the Silver Sirens community, thinking about it individually, talking amongst ourselves in groups like this, and also talking to our friends, family members about the importance of planning for our future and finances as well. And starting early, because that's really the key. The earlier we can really create change through conversation, then the earlier we can really bring about systemic change to organizations as well as to the country from a societal level. So I felt the book was really a starting point to get people to really think about it positively and be inspired. And I love interviewing people and collecting stories. So there were many more people who I interviewed that I found inspiring, but I kept it to 20 women in my book who I wrote these short vignettes about, who I felt like each one of them had tried something new and different for themselves that I thought would be a really inspiring way to inspire my readers to think about what new ways that they can apply to their own lives step by step. And, you know, because there's a whole range of different stories, there are certain stories that maybe people read and go, oh, that's not really the role model for me, and be inquisitive about, oh, why does that cause a bit of a reaction in me? Is it because I like to be spontaneous and I don't necessarily want to be planned, you know, as have everything all planned and mapped out like someone else? Or is it more, oh, actually, I don't necessarily, I want that balance of spontaneity and to be prepared. So somewhere kind of between being spontaneous and not planning anything right up to the person who's got everything down pat. Have they got the life plan ready and, you know, set to go for the next few decades? You know, there's probably a crossover of everyone in between. And then there's no silver bullet. That's the other thing. Like I'm hoping people will read the book thinking, actually, key takeaway from all these stories is there is no one way. We can do it in our own style, at our own pace, and I can do it the way I think is appropriate for where I'm at and what my preferences are for a lifestyle, which no one can tell us what to do. So I also wanted to be cognizant that I didn't want to talk at people. It was more sharing my own learnings, how I've applied some of the things that I've observed and learned from others who have been in my community and generously shared their stories with me. And then hopefully some of the nuggets from the 20 women in the book also, I guess, get people to think about their own lives and talk about it with those around them as well.
Beautiful. Thank you, Natalie. Thank you. I know is there anyone in the room that has the book? Okay, you do. Okay, great, Jackie. Anyone else?
Yes, I do.
Oh, wonderful.
And
Great.
Elisa.
Fantastic. Okay, well, I want to hand it over to you. I mean, I know I've got mine marked, so I know what I want to ask, but I'm going to just leave some space. So when people go to you, Annalise, did you want to add something? Because I got so much out of just that introduction that Natalie gave us, but I'm going to see if you want to add anything or ask anything or clarify.
Yeah, so just quickly a bit, I came across Natalie, I think at the beginning of the year when I was still full-time working, and I was planning at the end of the year to maybe start looking at reducing full-time work. And then I ordered a book, started reading a book while I was still working, and then suddenly I got retrenched. And I decided, no, I'm stopping work, I'm not going back. And the 3 pillars that's in a book around learning, purpose, social connections, like she said, I'm on my own journey in those pillars, in every section. I was in HR, so I don't want any social connections at the moment. I'm just spending time at the moment with myself. So yeah, I'm finding the book really, really helpful. I take it, I read it, and I think I can't. I'm not always aligned with all the amazing women in the book. That's not where I'm at my life. I'm at the moment where I am, and I'm happy where I am, and I'll see where it takes me. But I do appreciate the framework it gives me to make sure going forward I have something that I can use.
Right. Yeah. And the idea of that framework of the 5 key ingredients of purpose, connection, vitality, lifelong learning, and wealth is that everyone will have a different focus at different times. I'm not expecting everyone to have all of it, all perfect, all at the same time. Like there's always different things that you need to focus on. And, you know, it's being mindful of, oh, well, I can make certain things or click together. Like if it's giving me what I need at this phase in life in this season. And you know, if things change, then at least you know, oh, there's other things to be thinking about, that it is quite circular in how it all ties in together.
Yeah. Beautiful. I just wanted to make a comment around the retirement. So really on page 25, you say retirement is dead, long live full-time living. And I know there are some elders that are having to work out of necessity. You know, I just wondered how that comes into this conversation around retirement being dead.
Yeah, look, I think the word retirement is a bit misleading, and that's why I really wanted to say, look, retirement in the traditional sense is dead, because the inception of it really came about because of Bismarck, and he was a military leader a few hundred years ago, and it was really back in the day of a way to give a pension to soldiers, and he already knew what the life expectancy was. And so I don't think that framework of the idea of stopping and knowing that when people's life expectancy would finish is a really good marker of, you know, when you hear about the line in the sand being a certain age, because I guess our health span is different, and also it's longer than ever before. So I guess, and also there's a lot of the longevity research that is showing that it's so important to still be active mentally and socially, and be engaged and have the opportunity to contribute and be valued. So I guess that whole concept of a life of leisure from the time you retire is a bit misleading in that, and I'm not saying that you can't relax and enjoy things. It's really shaping it to be something that where you can lead a meaningful life, and that's going to be different for everyone.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, so I might just pass to Jackie. Do you want to ask something? Because I know you've got the book. If not, I've got something that I want to jump into. So I'm going to ask like a bit of a group question.
Just make a little comment. Sorry, I joined late because I couldn't find the Zoom link, but you might have already commented, but when I can get it on the screen. I just absolutely love the aesthetic of this. It's so beautiful, and it just feels beautiful. It looks beautiful. It was like a real treat, you know, to receive it, and the way that it was wrapped, and having, I mean, I lived in Japan for 6 months actually, and it just reminded me, you know, there are so many sort of little Japanese elements to it, and I just really loved that. I love the aesthetic of it. It's very, very special, and feels like, oh, this is something really precious, you know. So I love that, and I've actually dressed in the colors, you might have noticed.
I can see you're all matching. Yeah,
to match the book. But yeah, I loved some of the stories from some of the Japanese places, and I was just looking at the one that you were talking about, Bizen and the Bizen Yaki pottery, and that really took me back to my days in Japan and going to that particular place, and you know, just the beautiful, I mean, I just really, the sweet smell of pine smoke mixed with long-standing success and passion hangs over the charming town of Bizen, and just the beauty of those words and just the way that it sort of took me back there was gorgeous. Yeah, but it's the timing of this book is really good for me also, because like Annalise, I also took a redundancy with COVID, and I'm also going through a very interesting transition into a whole new sort of life at the moment. So I've just become a marriage celebrant and also a funeral director, and, you know, doing after 30 years as a teacher, so doing lots of new things. And yeah, there are some really thoughtful questions in this book, and yeah, I love that. I love the 5, that the graph with the 5, there's the picture of it there, get it on the screen. Yeah, just
Can
sort
you
of
just say
thinking
the
about
page so people know the page if they've got
page 43.
Fantastic.
The 5 key ingredients for a full-time life. So yeah, so just sort of trying to think about all of those the different petals of the flower, and, you know, what's my purpose? I mean, I'm really happy now that I'm doing something that, I mean, teaching is of course also something that's contributing to the community, but I feel that my work in funerals is really contributing to the community. And you know, lifelong learning, well, obviously that's very relevant, you know, vitality and health, so going swimming with faith. Yeah, just kind of, you know, thinking about connections are very important to me, lots of, you know, good friends, and just kind of trying to make sure that I honor all of those different parts. So yeah, thank you, it's beautiful, I love it.
oh, I'm so glad.
Yeah.
I actually have a design background. I studied interior design for about 7 years. And so
very
along with
obvious,
having
yeah.
lived in Japan, where, as you say, everything's beautifully packaged and designed and really thoughtful, and the user experience of kind of opening up something, that surprise and delight, I really wanted that. So, you know, along with really focusing on the stories and the content and the research, I also put just as much effort into the aesthetic, of researching which book designer can I work with. And I had a very long design brief, and it wasn't just the graphics in the book, but it was also, the touch and feel of the paper and, the kind of the shininess of certain graphics on the cover.
It's very sensual.
Yeah,
Feels
we all, and as you
silky.
said, I wanted it to feel like a gift, because I also really want to acknowledge that the reader is at a place in life where she's given so much to everyone else that she deserves a present. So the least that I can do is package up the stories and the information in a way that's a gift to her, that she can keep coming back to and hopefully find joy in it every time you read it.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
And Jackie, did you also know that there's online resources that come with it? So,
right.
So there's a bonus book URL where you can also go and find links that I keep up to date, as well as like worksheets to help you process some of the thinking.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Beautiful. Does anyone else want to add anything before I jump in with my question? Okay, so I loved on page 64, you and I talked about it before a little bit, which was envision your future. And it's really difficult to, go to the next phase if we don't actually have a vision. So I really love that. So that brought me to the question. I thought we could throw this question out there. Oh, lost the page. Okay, it was a question about imagine yourself 5 years, 10 years, 20 years ahead. So I just thought we could go around and I'm happy to start off. And that idea of, can we put ourselves into the future, propel ourselves there? Anyway, I can't seem to find the page now. Here we go. Consider where you'll be. It's page 39. Consider where you'll be in 5, 10 or 20 years time. And I love those sort of questions. And as I was reading the book, I thought about it. And I also thought about it as you were speaking as well. And I think 20 years time, I will be 78. And I think that, and I like the idea of retirement is not an option, because I love the work that I do so much. And I love I already have that sense of ikigai and that sense of fulfillment. My heart's full of it. So the idea of just contributing in an age appropriate way. And what I mean by that is I don't have to be running around, because I'll be 78. Not running around, but really deeply seated in my elderhood and that wisdom, being able to share that wisdomhood and my crone-ness, and Pia would appreciate this. I really love the whole crone analogy and archetype, and really be sitting in that, and how that is, what vehicle that's expressing itself is kind of quite irrelevant to me, whether it's through writing books or, it's irrelevant. It's more around sitting in that elderhood. So I wondered what other people felt around that, propelling yourself. So anyone want to jump in, propel yourself 5, 10 or 20 years, whichever one you'd like to. Yeah, go Dahlia. You still need to unmute yourself. Oh, yeah, you go. You've done it.
Okay, I'm good. So to me, I've always worked for myself. So I didn't have all my life, I mean, I've been singing since I was a 4-year-old, and been traveling the world. I've been and my life around it. But I've been, life took me to all these places. I had to, I had to sort of earn even more money. So I became also a celebrant, a marriage celebrant, marriage and funeral celebrant. I've always been a sports person, so I've always been a sports leader, and now I'm a personal trainer. So I started so from singing, storytelling, personal trainer, a celebrant, and I've and traveling. And I've been traveling the world. I lived in Japan for 2 years. I performed in Japan. It's my very, very favorite place. And I sing a lot in Japanese too. So to me, I just hope that I can continue in, I don't know, in 10 years, in 20 years, as long as I have my voice and as long as I have my enthusiasm and health. I'm so happy to continue because my life has been so great.
It's amazing. We'd all love to have that diverse set of activities that you do. Like I'd love to be good at all those things that you can do. I can't sing, but I'd like to learn from you.
And I'm writing a book too now.
I was going to say, this sounds like a book that you need to write for us to read.
I have to write this book.
Right.
Because I was born in Israel. The same day that Israel was formed, I witnessed the forming of a new country and a revival of a 3,000-old biblical language that is my mother tongue. So now I have this in this time of my life. By the way, I'm 78 now. So it's time to write it, to put it down.
Let us know when it's out.
Oh yes.
Yeah, for sure. Excellent. Okay, someone else want to jump in? If not, I'm going to just call names because I like everyone to add their voice if possible. So I know Galaxy SM, do you want to change your name? And I'll come back to you in a moment. What about you, Susan? Let's go to you. So propelling ourselves, just unmute yourself. So 5, 10 or 20 years time, vision in yourself.
Bothering me adding that up. Just going, oh my goodness. I've had a lot of change in the last 2 years and massive amount of options have opened up in a hell of a hurry very recently for me. I'm just trying to get my head around whether I can actually be brave enough, be able to do some things that are sitting on the horizon that are going to really freak out people that I know. I find it really frustrating, people my age and around and younger who go, oh, I'm old now. Well, I've just got to sit down and, I just can't handle that. Life is full of so many wonderful things, options, opportunities, new ways to look at things. So 5 years from now, I don't know. Like I said, I'm playing with a lot of things. And I suggest to the lady who was just speaking about not being able to sing, just sing.
Yeah, for my own pleasure, not for anyone else who can hear.
Yeah, well, you'll get there. The more you practice, the more you get. I'm involved in a music organisation here, and it's absolutely fabulous to watch people come along and build and grow their strengths and their knowledge. And so I'm doing a lot of things, and I've got more things to do. Thank you.
Sounds like it.
Thank you.
So where are you, Susan?
Central West New South Wales, Orange.
Orange, cool.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Okay, so I've got Samsung SM. I know that's not your name. Can I get you to jump in? Hello.
She may not know that that's
that's true.
Name.
The lovely lady, okay, with the glasses. Yeah, she's going, well, Samsung. Just unmuting. Okay, we'll come back to you. That's fine. Okay, I know you're hiding behind there, Min. How about you, Min?
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
We can.
All right. I'm sorry, I'm a bit shy.
No problem.
I'm actually quite overwhelmed listening to everyone speak today. Whilst I'm only 58, I feel like I have never been more untethered in my life than ever before. I have been in a supporting role to my husband's career, caring for my family for the majority of my adult life. And realised now, as I've faced this retirement, that I've never really spent enough time looking at what's important to me. I don't feel I have a direction. I'm not sure where to go, what to do with myself. I am healthy and fully active. I have a wonderful circle of friends. I have beautiful children doing their lives in the best way they can, and I'm really proud. But now my husband is also retiring, and we're sort of scratching our heads at such a young age, wondering what to do next. I was leaning on towards you ladies for some inspiration, I guess.
You've come to the right place, Min. You really have.
Yeah, so I'm listening carefully. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to pass that over to you, Natalie. Do you want to respond to Min?
Yeah, Min, sometimes we don't always have all the answers right away, but the fact that you've shown up to be part of this conversation and shared your story with us, you know, that's really wonderful, because I guess it sounds like you're on a pathway to explore.
Yes.
How does that feel, and taking these steps?
It is somewhat daunting, really, to have everything at my feet ready to grasp, but I don't know which way to go. Yeah, I've explored smaller creative things that I enjoy. I love my yoga and Pilates, but when I look at your ikigai, I feel like I've got so many gaps that I just don't know how to fill. And I'm a little afraid.
One of the things that like I end the book with the last chapter, which is experiment with the full-time life. And what I mean by that is actually just breaking it down. So I know, like, yeah, it's a big thing to say, find your ikigai. That's such a big question that can take a whole lifetime to explore and figure out what that is. And obviously it also changes as well. But I guess it comes from my training as being in product innovation, is sometimes you don't really know what the future holds. And so the only way to really move towards figuring out what feels right and is right for your circumstances is to break it down into little experiments so that it de-risks things. So you're not spending too much time and effort or money on something that might be huge life change, but really trying to break it down into something that could be much smaller, shorter scale, so that you can feel like you're just taking a step towards exploring. And I guess one of the examples I give is, at one point, I thought a really great thing for me to take up would be tap dancing. And because I've always loved Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers, I love watching 1950s musicals, and I thought, oh, that'd be a really great thing because I'll be learning something new. It's active and meet new people. But it wasn't like going to the classes just wasn't what I thought. I signed up for a couple of terms thinking, oh, maybe it's a matter of time to apply it. But I don't see that as failure in terms of, well, I'm really glad that I tried it. And I know that, well, actually, I just like going watching other people tap dance and going to musicals. I don't necessarily need to be the one who's performing. And then I guess that kind of led me to go, all right, well, what's the next thing? And, I guess then discovered archery that had been introduced to me by my jiu-jitsu coach, who said, because I asked him, well, look, I really want to find something that is some kind of a sport, but it'll help me focus. And so then I signed up to do archery classes, which was something that I enjoyed a lot more. So I guess it's a process of exploring things that maybe you didn't have time to do before, but now that you've got a little bit more time to try things and just just either sign up for a class or do something for the first time that maybe you didn't have the opportunity to do before, and just see if that's something that you is aligned with your expectations. And if it's something you enjoy, you might keep going and trialing a little bit more of it, or you might decide, actually, I'm glad I did it. I tried it. It's not really for me. Move on to the next thing. And there's really no risk in that if it's small, because there's very few things that are irreversible.
Yes, I appreciate that point of view. I've always been quite open to trying new things. I have no difficulty at all in connecting with people, making new friends. So yeah, I usually follow leads when they're in front of me. I just feel like some of you ladies here tonight have got real purpose in life, though, that I'm very envious of. You celebrants and the artists, but I'll find my place. I'll keep searching.
I mean, we were all where you were too. If you've ever heard my story about my midlife crisis, I was exactly where you were too. And as a psychotherapist, you know, that's kind of, I see women in that space. So you're just at that phase. You're not going to stay there. Okay,
Thank
just
you.
keep jumping on, and you'll hear what you need to hear. You know, you're just so in the right place. You really are.
Thank you.
100%. You know, we're really glad you're here.
Thank you very much.
I want to go over to Angela. I was going to come over to you anyway, Angela. I spotted you already. Okay, over to you. So I don't know if you want to answer the same question or you want to pose something else.
Well, actually, I wanted to add to that part of the discussion, because what Natalie was saying is what I totally agree with as well, is that if we get ourselves too tied up with this idea of, I've got to find my purpose, you know, like the pearly gates open and the choir will sing and the angels will descend, then we can really get so stuck, because that feels huge. And so the idea of the little experiments, or the what we call in my world purposeful projects. So things that are bite-sized and that being led by your curiosity. But the other piece to it, which I find has been really helpful in discovering these purposeful projects, are getting on your soapboxes. So what are the things that like outrage you, or, you know, rile you up, or you've always been interested in, or you think need fixing, or et cetera, et cetera. And those soapboxes, I think, give us the chance to see where we feel we would like to make a contribution. And I think it's really important for us to realize that we don't have to be like, you know, Mahatma Gandhi or you know, Mother Teresa. We don't have to change the world. We can have this little ripple effect by just making, you know, a small contribution, because it then radiates out and impacts other people. So that lovely lady who was speaking before, you know, that's what we can do. And I know this might sound like a very tiny thing, but one of the things when I was studying positive psychology, and it drives my children crazy, because I speak to strangers and I just compliment strangers in the line at Woolworths and things like that, just that human connection. You just never know where it's going to go to. And so there's little things we can do on a daily basis to enhance our own positivity and the energy with which we turn up with. And when you do that, the broaden and build theory in positive psychology tells us that when our mood is elevated, we notice more opportunities. When our mood is deflated, then everything looks a bit shit, excuse my French. So if we can settle ourselves into that space of looking for positive opportunities and making them happen just by the way we interact, then those purposeful possibilities, they tend to come out of the woodwork a little bit. But I think we just have to dial down our expectations and look for the little bits of goodness that are there every single day.
Beautiful.
That's my feeling.
Yeah.
But I love those 5 concepts, Natalie, you know, purpose and connection and vitality and lifelong learning and wealth. They just make so much sense to me. They make so much sense. And every one of us is going to have a different recipe. And that's the beautiful thing, because if we all were chasing the same stuff, life would be very boring. So I reckon there's always possibilities there for each of us.
Fantastic. Now, sorry, I've still got Samsung. So.
My name's Anya.
Hi, Sonia.
Anya. Go, Anya.
Hi. I've had, my experience has been, I'm 58, and about 20 months ago, from having no health problems at all, I suddenly find myself with a chronic health condition. I've basically got the cognitive effects of long COVID from the vaccine. So overnight, I suddenly had a major health problem, and I had no choice after a year but to leave my full-time professional job. So after 30 years of full-time work, I found myself not working. So that's been a pretty major adjustment process. This year, so I made a determined effort, beginning of this year, I've got to just reinvent my life. And so I've found it's been very useful joining various social groups. So there's two I'd mention in particular that might be of interest to other participants. One is called Connected Women. That's for women over 50. And there's one in Sydney, and it covers all areas of Sydney. There's a huge array of interesting events, from walks to talks to meals out to days out of town, to cultural events and so on. And I've found that very good for meeting other like-minded women and developing some good friendships. And there's a paid membership for it, but there is a month, an offer of a month's free membership. So if anybody is interested, if you just jot down my number, I'm happy to provide you further details. It's 0417 343 754. And the other group is Sydney Women's International Club for women who've moved to Sydney from interstate or overseas, or are just living in Sydney and wanting to make other social connections. I've also set up a Scrabble group. I go to a monthly vegetarian cooking group that I found through Meetup. I do a weekly walking group in Centennial Park. So all of those things have really helped me, including just to stay positive in this medical no person's land where nobody really knows too much about my condition, and it's unknown how long I'll be unwell for. So helping me cope with the uncertainty and just keeping on looking forward and being positive. So that's made a big difference to me.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that information. And just to let everyone know, we're actually working with Connected Women. So we're working with them on the partnership. Yes. Jodie and I have been speaking to them for quite a while. So yeah, so I'm happy to add information to the follow-up email. So we've got that. They do social groups, and their thing is around helping against loneliness. And they did research that loneliness was an epidemic for women our age and older. So that's why they have social groups, so you can jump on. And I've actually got a membership with them as well. So does Jodie. So
right, great.
Yeah.
Great. It's been great for me.
Yeah, brilliant. So I'm just going to hand back to Natalie because I do want us to finish on time. So I just want you just to wrap it up for us. So what should we take away? I mean, I like your book. So what should we take away for women, especially that have not read it yet?
Yeah, look, I would say, this beautiful supportive environment of listening to each other, I guess it's holding each other up. I think that's just so important because we're all at different phases of creating change, or change has been thrust upon us. I'd say that, really being listeners and understanding kind of where people are at, that's kind of one thing that we can do to support each other as a community. And then I guess also really making space in our lives and mentally to really be able to reimagine what the possibilities are. That's also important. And that's going to mean something different for everyone. And you might need things, in different contexts. It can vary. So I guess it's kind of being mindful of what do you need at this point in time, and also asking for it if you can, if you do need that support or that space to free you up to explore and discover, and I guess then reimagine the future for yourself.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. And just for the women that are struggling, I mean, we have so many amazing coaches and leaders and facilitators in the Silver Sirens community. So just the beautiful things that you've learned, you know, from Natalie. Angela's also going to be running a class in October. And next week, we've got another beautiful life coach who's going to be running a workshop on boundaries for nice people. And boundaries is one of those things. I think no matter how good you think you are at boundaries, you can always sharpen that up, because there's always an area that we fall down. We could be really great at boundaries at work and then fall short with our kids, or vice versa. Okay, so Min, please stick around. There's always more information, because Silver Sirens was actually created for women like you, because I had my soapbox moment that Angela was talking about, because I was so frustrated that there were so many women that I was meeting like you who had no blueprint or no idea how to manage this transitional phase of their lives. Okay, so you really are in the right space. So we want to just thank Natalie again. Thank you so much for your beautiful gift to us. This is exactly what we needed, just really clear guidelines that I think will resonate with a lot of women. Obviously it does, and it certainly resonated with me. So we just thank you so much for your beautiful creation.
Well, thank you all for making space and time to meet together and connect and share stories and insights.
Yeah, we thank you.
Thank you.